Hello, BookTube. I come back to you today in praise of chunkers, the great BookTube phrase for books that are egregiously long, intimidatingly long. And today's concentration is on contemporary fiction. I had a dear friend once years ago, a legendary book agent of the old school 3 martini lunch type, who used to say that a very large novel is not an author's success, it's an editor's failure. And I tended to agree with him, although he wasn't infallible, for instance, in saying that Jacqueline Suzanne's Valley of the Dolls would be a flop. We should all have such flops. But in some cases, for some novels, I think he was wrong. Some novels need to immerse you and do so successfully. And I have a small batch of them here that I want to show you, recommend to you, and maybe read a bit, not from, but about to you. Starting not quite on target. The first one I want to show you is Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon, but it's fairly svelte. The Thomas Pynchon novel that I actually want to put in this tag is one that I realize I don't have, and that is Mason and Dixon. His novel about the eponymous American explorers and cartographers, the team. And it's much bigger than Gravity's Rainbow, and I wanted to recommend it because I think it is Pynchon's best book. His most controlled, his most biting, and by a wide margin, his funniest. There are set pieces in that book that will have you howling with laughter on the subway, and it's all inappropriate laughter, which is even better. So I do, of course, recommend Gravity's Rainbow. It's an American experience. You have to read it. But if you see Mason and Dixon and you think, well, I don't know if this is good Pynchon or bad Pynchon, I'm telling you, it's great Pynchon. Our next one is a type of fiction chunker that is prevalent, and that is the romance novel, specifically the historical romance. Well, this is Through a Glass Darkly by Kathleen Koen, and it is, first of all, it's her debut, and to get a debut like this off the ground is no mean feat. But this boldly inspired novel is a grand-scale, multi-layered love story that transports readers into the rich world of the 18th century. Set in the upper-class families of England and France, Through a Glass Darkly tells the story of willful Barbara Adderley, the grandmother she adores, the mother she despises, and the man she loves. At age 15, Barbara finds herself betrothed to a man 27 years her senior, a man she has been fascinated with since childhood. Marriage to Roger Montjeffrey propels Barbara into a glittering, cynical society. The silk-lined drawing rooms, the rosemary-scented beds, the casual adulteries, and the violent politics of the age of Richelieu, Pope, and Swift. Of magnificent buildings by Christopher Wren, of powdered hair and unobstructed cleavage, of greed, elegance, excess, and cruelty. And it does that. It richly paints an atmosphere, and it couldn't, I don't think, do that in 200 pages. And the grandmother mentioned in that summary it actually steals all the part of the book that she's in, and we wouldn't feel the texture of her either, of her long life, if it weren't for this book's length. So if you see this and you're of a historical romance bent, you won't be sorry. Same thing with this next one. A gigantic chunker. And Ladies of the Club. This is by Helen Hooven Santmyer, and is a beam of hope to any would-be author, because she was very late in life when she wrote this gigantic thing, and it became a hit. Here we go. The dust jacket actually alludes to that. This book is the product of 50 years of work by its remarkable author, 88-year-old Helen Hooven Santmyer, but it is a rare event in any publishing season, a great, rich reading experience peopled with characters you will come to know intimately and care about profoundly. It's set in a small-town literary society, and the reason that we come to know the characters intimately is because we come to know them over a great deal of time. We see their age unfold around the events of their little society, and each chapter begins, or each segment of the book begins with the roll call, so that we can see who's there, who's not, whose children have joined. This had its heyday a long time ago, and is often dismissed as just garrulous junk, but it's not. It's not. It's really, really good. Our next one will be on the radar for quite a few. This is Underworld by Don DeLillo. This is his well, now we know his magnum opus because he doesn't write books this size anymore. 0K is his new one, and it's a tenth this size. This one is a fantastic blend of action and noir and American slice of life. I think it's unlike anything else he's ever done, and it convinced me. It really did. Let's see here. Our lives, our half century. Might as well be my epitaph. Nick Shea and Clara Sachs knew each other once, intimately, and they meet again in the American desert. He is trying to outdistance the crucial events of his early life, haunted by the hard logic of loss and by the echo of a gunshot in a basement room. She is an artist who has made a blood struggle for independence. It's a huge cast of characters, both historical and invented. It's just, it's self-indulgently long, but I can't believe that even my old agent friend would have wanted to cut any of it if he'd read it. Next one is a type of chunker, fictional chunker, that some of you will be familiar with from Lord of the Rings, a book that is packaged as a trilogy or a quartet, but is actually structured as one novel. Lord of the Rings is one novel. It's just packaged as 3 books. And it is Paul Scott, the Raj Quartet, which is composed of The Jewel and the Crown, The Day of the Scorpion, The Tower of Silence, and A Division of the Spoils. And it is a novel, an opulent, panoramic novel of the British Raj, of the rule in India, and from its deceptively complacent early days to the turmoil of revolution and unrest, and not only in the country but in the world. And because those events form the backdrop, I mean, you've got a fantastic cast of characters here, including a wonderfully hissable villain. Oh my! You have a wonderful cast of characters, and that's great. Paul Scott was I believe the kids refer to him today as a raging a-hole, but boy, could he write. And you have not only that, but you also have the historical panorama that it plays out behind, and that wouldn't be as effective if it weren't as long. So, I mean, the Raj Quartet, these are oldies but goodies, most of these, that I will do are contemporary fiction, another contemporary fiction chunker piece that maybe isn't so old, but this one is worth your time if you see it, especially you'll almost certainly see it in a boxed set of 4 novels, but try it. Just the first one. I feel certain it will hook you. Next one is another type of chunker, and that is the chunker mystery. This is Elizabeth George, Believing the Lie, and it's quite big. I believe it's the biggest book she's ever done, although one of the things I love about her is that as she has achieved success, she has achieved length. She has long, complicated stories to tell and doesn't want to do them in the clockwork 200-page in and out murder mystery format. And increasingly, she doesn't do that. The Just One Evil Act was, I think, right before this. Very nearly as long and fantastic. This is also fantastic. It's not high literature, and it isn't meant to be. But the Inspector Lindley novels are really, really smart and not gimmicky. She's a tough author to praise. It's tough to find the right words until you've experienced her, but her books are amazing. And this one is amazing in large part because it needs this much room to work. There's a subplot that eventually becomes the main plot that wouldn't work if it were done shorter or in less shorthand. So I recommend Elizabeth George just in general. But I very much recommend this book. You don't need to read them in any kind of order. Our next one, also a bestseller, also intimidating. These are getting slightly longer as they go along. This is An Instance of the Fingerpost by Ian Pears, who was a writer of short novels, including some murder mysteries, and had a historical magnum opus inside him the whole time, just grinding to get out. And this one is set during England in the 1660s. Charles II has been restored to the throne following years of civil war and Oliver Cromwell's short-lived republic. Oxford is the intellectual seat of the country, a place of great scientific, religious, and political ferment. A fellow of New College is found dead in suspicious circumstances. A young woman is accused of his murder. We hear the story of the death from 4 witnesses, an Italian physician intent on claiming credit for the invention of blood transfusion, the son of an alleged royalist traitor, a master cryptographer who has worked for both Cromwell and the king, and a renowned Oxford antiquarian. Each tells his own version of what happened. And that's why this book is so big, because each one tells what would otherwise be a single novel. It's first-person narratives of the same events. And the genius here is that you have to pay attention to the whole thing because they don't line up. And they don't line up. They disagree in fascinating ways. Those of you who have maybe heard of or watched Jen Campbell's great video on Ian Pears' new book, Arcadia, will have a taste from that review or that video about the kind of narrative stuff he does. It's fantastic. He's the only one doing it in the way that he's doing it today. And it's never more assured or more large scale than this book. It's a total success. So as big as it is, I urge you to try it. Our next one is one of the only fiction chunkers I know of that's actually popular on BookTube, and that is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susannah Clarke. This is it's quite big, and it's a tale of two sorcerers during the Napoleonic era, a carefully reimagined Napoleonic era in which sorcery exists, and it's amazing. She pulls out all the gimmicks of the the soup to nuts big novelist writer. There's annotation and all sorts of backstory, and that fills in the main narrative, the rivalry between the two main characters. And I don't think it would work if it were done shorter, or worse, if it were done in a series. I'm so glad that this is just a big standalone masterpiece. And I know that you've seen it on other BookTube videos, and I know probably that you've seen it in used bookstores. Grab it. Give it a try. It only looks intimidating. It's actually immensely inviting. And our last one is our longest one, and also our most recent one, and that is The Dying Grass by William Vollmann. This is a genuine fictional chunker, and from an author who writes them regularly. He's a long-winded author. This is a 1,200-page novel about one incident in the Nez Perce War, which is one part of the war of genocide that American troops and American government conducted against the native inhabitants of this continent. So, to say the least, it's not a promising ground for extended historical fiction, but then again, neither was Whaling. And it's magnificent, absolutely magnificent. It's a cast of hundreds, but the main characters, one on one side and one on the other, are very complicatedly non-one-dimensional. You can't hate anybody in this book, but you also can't like anybody in this book, and that keeps the narrative tension just taut as a bowstring from beginning to end, which is not something you'd expect in something this big. You expect that it would sag, and it doesn't. So I wholeheartedly recommend it, and there you have it. I can't possibly hold all these up, but I recommend them all. These are books that actually benefit from their chunker status. And the next time we do this, we'll go back to nonfiction. So brace yourselves. Thank you, BookTube.